Style with the Basketball Embassy, and this is the United We Hoop podcast. And I'm joined today by Coach Don Showalter. Coach Show, one of my favorite guys. Coach, how you doing?
Great, Chris, and certainly happy to be part of what you're doing here.
Well, Coach, we can't thank you enough. There's no way we could have an A-list production like this without having you on. So like I said, I owe you a couple of steaks and a good glass of wine maybe after this. But I want to just a little bit to our audience, for those of you guys that aren't familiar, you've had your head under a rock somewhere, but Coach Showalter, by all intents and purposes, is kind of the primary architect of youth curriculum in the United States of America, and maybe more, pertinently known for leading our U16s every year. Coach has failed to lose a game so far. He's got, enough gold medals to hang one on each finger. They're too heavy to do that, but and has just been a staple for guys like me, coming up in the coaching ranks. You try to latch on to the good ones, you find them, and you soak up whatever you can. And Coach, you've definitely been that for me. And I've been so fortunate in the last 4 or 5 years to actually be around you and get in front of you and come out to Colorado Springs and bring a bunch of foreigners in to visit. And we've had some fun.
Yeah, it's really been, the coaching profession itself, it certainly is an international profession. I mean, we all have, I think we all have contacts around the world that we certainly enjoy, and basketball is a great sport international wise, and we're all trying to get better. We're all trying to learn. I think that's what's so fun about the game.
No, I agree, Coach. And I'll try not to just sit here and make it an hour worth of compliments, but you've embraced that concept maybe better than anybody else in this country. I think for somebody that wears USA on your chest as much as you do, to still have kind of the foresight and the awareness to appreciate all the dynamics of this game, globally, and how many influences we've got abroad and how many people influence us. And you've managed to kind of hold on to some of those really fundamental, principles that to guys like us, maybe they're black and white, but you've also managed to adapt, and kind of continue to grow within the game. So I think that's one of the themes that'll probably come out in our conversation today a little bit. And we've got some coaches that'll definitely be tuning in and listening. And so I think they'll really enjoy it. Coach, I do want to talk a little bit about, rather let you talk a little bit about your path. I think there's plenty of folks, that get in your circle and they've been to your clinics and they've, watched the videos, and the ones that have been fortunate enough to get out to the offices in Colorado Springs, you guys rolled the red carpet out for guests like nobody. But I don't know how many people understand what a true traditionalist you've been, and, roots going back to Iowa and high school basketball. And Coach, can you just share a little bit about your path in basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it's, my path. I try and tell young coaches, you really don't try to connect the dots ahead of you, because you never know what's going to happen in your basketball career, where it takes you, all those kind of things. So as I look back, I certainly can connect a lot of dots in my basketball career. And I started out as a young coach right out of college, played NAIA basketball, had a great time at that level, loved the game. I knew I wanted to coach ever since I was elementary. I just knew that's a passion I had. I loved the game of basketball. And then as I, progressed in my playing, the reality sunk in. I wasn't going to play professional basketball. So the next best thing for me was to coach it. And right out of college, as a young coach, I coached a small high school for a couple of years. And as I think a lot of young coaches, they think they know a lot, and they get it right into that first job, and by golly, they're going to turn things around if it's not a very good job, and the school hadn't been many wins under their belt. as a young coach, I said, well, this is going to be great for me because I can come in and win right away. And I found out I was humbled right away. So I remember those 2 years, but it was a great experience. The school I went to had really been struggling for a couple of years. In fact, they hadn't won a game for a couple of years. And so for a new young coach going into a situation, for me, that was really good. Whatever I did was deemed on the right path. And then after 2 years, I went to another high school that had a great basketball tradition. And then now to go from building one to keeping one going I found out, a little bit different as well. And then I went back to my alma mater. I spent 10 years outside, and I always said I was not going to go back to my alma mater. That was not something I wanted to do, but just how things change, and getting our kids back to grandparents and people I knew around that area. And I said, well, we'll go back for 3 or 4 years, and 28 years later, I was still there. So that was a good move. We had a great basketball tradition, great basketball program. And then I ended up at a larger high school in Iowa City, a very diverse high school that really challenged me a lot as a coach, which I super enjoyed. So I had really a lot of different experiences getting there. And then I started coaching with USA Basketball in 1998. While I was still coaching high school basketball during this time as well. But Milt Newton, who worked with USA Basketball, who's now the assistant GM for the Milwaukee Bucks, I got to know him pretty well, and he liked what I did, and he asked me to coach our Hoop Summit game in San Antonio, by the way, Chris. That was during the Final Four. And so, of course, that was a tremendous experience for me. We had a guy named Rashard Lewis, who was from Texas, a great kid, still a great person I keep in touch with. But we met a German floppy-haired 19-year-old that year by the name of Dirk Nowitzki, and we held him to 35 points, I think, and about 25 rebounds, Chris. So that was his coming out party. He really, at that time, we didn't international. At that level, international kids were not really scouted that much, or so that was his coming out party. He got drafted high, and of course, the rest is history with his. So that was my first induction into USA Basketball. The next year, I had a chance to coach the McDonald's All-American game, which was held in Ames, Iowa, and then USA Basketball asked me to serve on some committees, and we actually had some festivals during that time between 98 and 2009 that brought in 40 top high school players in the country, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and we have a mini Olympics, north, south, east, west type of thing. So I coached in that, served on the committee that helped pick players and coaches for that. So stayed involved with it. And then in 2009, FIBA started the U16, the new junior national team, U16, and then U17, and USA Basketball asked me to coach in that, which I did since then. So that's kind of my path. Little longer stated, but as a young coach, you kept your doors open. And one thing I want to mention to young coaches is I always get questions about, hey, what can I do to coach at the next level, or I want to be a Division I coach, or I want to get to the NBA, or I want to be a head high school coach. My first response is, well, you better really do a good job where you're at. If you don't do a good job where you're at, you're not going to get a lot of chances to go from a head ninth grade coach to a head high school coach if you don't do a good job of where you're at the ninth grade level. And it just goes up the line. So that's one advice I give to young coaches all the time. Because I think too many coaches, young coaches, they want to fast track themselves. They want to jump. They want to jump over rungs in the ladder to get to where they think they want to go. And many times when that happens, it doesn't pan out for them. So you do a great job of where you're at, where your feet are, and then people notice, and you'll get other opportunities.
Absolutely. And coach, on that too, I've been around you enough, and we brought, some foreign delegations over, and we've had within those delegations, we've put delegations, our friends from Mexico are going to be listening to this, our friends from Belarus, we've had, a handful of groups that have come out to visit there at the facility. And it's always funny to me to watch, because we've got, maybe we've got 12 coaches representing this country, and they'll be everything from on the senior level national team down to a youth coach in some rural, part of the country. But we'll come see Don Showalter, and they're out there and they've got their stuff, they're ready, and everybody's excited. I'm excited, and you'll come out there, drop a couple of, sort of life-changing nuggets on them, and then you'll demonstrate a drill. And I think some of the expectation, even especially here in the United States, is, well, I've got Don Showalter in front of me, and I'm about to get some incredible Swiss Army knife drill I've never seen before. It's going to win me a million games. And you come out and we're doing jump stop work, and everybody's still really excited, but they're like, hey, I know this drill, a little bit.
Yep.
And it takes them a minute, but then they start to understand, the brilliance in that, which is, it's not the perfect drill. It's just doing the drill perfectly, and you've always, it's always funny. We, I was talking to, RC the other day, said to tell you hello. And he was talking about Pop gets these guys out there every year. The first drill they do is this full court stop drill. Drives these guys crazy. He said Tim Duncan for 19 years rolling his eyes at this drill. But talk about, why that's important when you're talking to these young coaches a little bit. But I think it goes for everybody. I think a businessman, an entrepreneur, a banker, a doctor, maybe could all appreciate not escaping, the fundamentals, not skipping steps.
You raise a good point, Chris, and I'll go back to, and I've had the opportunity to speak at, for business organizations and as well, but I go back to as a young coach, I was probably motivated to learn the game from, obviously the best. And so as a young coach, right out of college, I wrote a handwritten note to John Wooden. And for those guys, all over the world that don't know who John Wooden is, he's a former UCLA coach, greatest coach of all time. And so I wrote him a letter to say, hey, I would like to work your camp, be a counselor, whatever. And handwritten letter, and send it off, seal it and send it off. Didn't think I'd ever hear back from him. I got a letter back from him in about 2 weeks, handwritten by Coach John Wooden, says, we're filled for this year, but I'm going to pass your name on to the guy who does our hiring. And I thought, well, at least I got a handwritten note back from him. I'll probably never hear from it again. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a note from Chris Smith, who organizes the camp, said, hey, we need a counselor. Would you like to come out? And of course, I jumped to the chance. So that was my first introduction to Coach Wooden and his camps. And I think from that, then I worked his camps for about 25 years. And so I think from that aspect of it, I really learned that the game is really a simple game taught well. And it's funny because you mentioned, Chris, that, I'll speak a lot of international clinics, and I think coaches are wanting this one drill, this one big offensive set that's going to change what they do. Well, there's nothing like that. It just isn't like that. So I think working John Wooden's camps made me understand that, simple drill taught well is really the way to go. It's really how you teach the game of basketball. And I also understood that as years go on, it's not really what you teach. We all have different players and programs. So it's not really what you teach with your players, it's how you teach it. And so I'm very, when I go out and work camps and stuff, it's very much how the game is taught, not so much what it's taught, what is taught. And I keep going back to that. So I think, learning from Coach Wooden obviously was one of those things that propelled my uh, desire to teach the game the right way, to really teach it simply. But like you said, Chris, with a lot of things, I mean, there's no easy way to get where you want to go. But with the stamp of a finger or whatever, it's a process, and you have to really enjoy that process.
Yeah, I completely agree. I try to remind myself daily, if I got there without difficulty, I'm probably not there. I, I think I'm there, but if it was easy, I'm not there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but no, coach, and you make so many good points. And, we talk about this game, often from that teaching standpoint. Basketball is probably the most overcoached and undertaught game on the planet. Everybody's coaching. But teaching is different, and you've got to know your learners too. And that's what's always been incredible to me. I get in all these different circles all over. Some of these guys know you personally. Some of them never met you, but act like they do. And they'll make comments like, oh, shows, 70 some odd and in international play, but look who he's coaching. I mean, these guys couldn't lose if they tried. And I'm thinking, well, that's spoken like a true armchair quarterback over there. There's a lot more to it. But you get these guys. You ran through some of those names. I don't know that people understand quite. When the NBA draft pops up, those top players, a lot of those guys have played for Coach Show, and a lot of those guys have represented at a youth level since 08, 09, and so when you get a group of talent like that, there's some egos in that gym, even at 15, 16 years old. What are some of the things that you're cognizant of when you're trying to get these perennial super talents, potential prima donna, some of that stuff's not fair because some of these guys coming in, they're just the most incredible, most coachable kids, but they've got the potential to have an incredible ego. Most of them have been told from day one that they're better than everybody else. How do you get them to do a jump stop pivot drill on day one and actually?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, when you look at coaching itself, I think that first of all, I think there's got to be a trust factor between players and coaches, and to me, that's probably the number one, the highest standard you can get is trust, and players, by the core of themselves, players want to get better. They really want to improve, and so if they know that you as a coach are working to make them a better player, I think that they have that attitude that that what, this is going to be good for me, and regardless of who they bring, some of the guys have a lot of people in their circle. Some have a very few people in their circle, but generally speaking, the circle of friends they have really don't tell them the truth. They don't speak the truth to them because they're all telling them how good they're going to be and how great they are and how much money they're going to earn down the road, because they all want something from the player down the road. And so I think they come to us, and I think after a bit, the players understand that, we don't want anything from them. We're completely transparent. We're only trying to make them a better player. We don't want any accolades for coaching them. We don't want any, money down the road. We're not into it for anything other than making them a better player. So I think that really kind of peels away the skin of what's going on, and once they see that, I think they're really very, very open to whatever we do. And you're right. We'll start out the first practices. We're doing jump stops, pivot jump stops, and they're having a great time with it. And they're really buying into the fact that this is part of what we do. So the egos, it's surprising, Chris, when you said that the young players, they come in with some egos, but they're also a little unsure of how good they really are. Which you think, oh man, that's unusual. But they they they're they read about people, the other players, or maybe they played against them in a game or two, but they're really unsure how they compare with the other really good players.
Right.
And so when they're all together in one group, sometimes their egos are a little fragile.
Yeah.
And and so we have to, as coaches, we have to help them understand that we're going to tell them the truth.
Right.
We're going to tell them, here are things you need to work on. Here are things that maybe are you're really good at, but here's things that you need to work on with that. So it's quite a process, really, Chris. I think the first 2009 we had guys like Brad Beal, Andre Drummond, Quinn Cook, Michael Gilchrist, that group, and that was our first. I mean, we were really stupid. I mean, we just didn't. When I say that, we didn't know. We just didn't know who we had. How good the players were, because we really hadn't a clue, because we didn't have much to go on. But we were very fortunate to get really good kids and good players. So I always remember Brad saying stuff like, "Man, this is really fun to play with these kind of players."
Right.
And so he, even though he played in St. Louis and won a state championship, he didn't play with other really good players. So I think just that fun part of it for them was kind of a new level for them, and we've tried to take that through with all our teams.
Right. No, and I don't think people realize how difficult it is to take, in international play, you get a team like that. I mean, we're talking from selection to your last game is a very tight window. And, when I got into coaching internationally and national teams and going to these tournaments, these FIBA tournaments, it was a whole new appreciation for these staffs, because you've got to do in a very micro cycle what most of us struggle to do in a macro cycle, and build an identity, establish an ethos, get guys on the same page, that build that trust, the relationship, and then you got to go out and make shots, and it's not the easiest thing to do in that short amount of time.
And I always, I don't mean to interrupt you, Chris, but
No,
I always said that, as I look at international teams, I mean, there's really some really good players in the world. And I know we have a lot of international coaches who are listening, who have, and a lot of close friends of mine are international coaches, who have done a great job of coaching the game in international basketball. And so, having said that, we have to make sure that we put a great team together, not great individuals.
Right.
Well, we've had some really hard conversations about not taking a player for in our top 12 who ends up being a third round draft pick.
Right.
But they didn't fit what we needed as a team, because if we're going to beat the Spains and Turkeys and France's and Argentina's of the world, we need a team that's going to play together, not a group of McDonald's All-Americans.
Right.
And there's a big huge difference.
Sure.
With those two.
There's some growing pains there. I mean, our senior group kind of went through that a little bit, realizing that it's not the 12 most talented. You got to have guys that are going to do their job. And if everyone does the same job in basketball, it doesn't work that way. You got to have screen setters and rebounders and energy guys and guys that'll hit the floor and guys that take pride in guarding somebody and, out rebounding their position and, setting hard screens, those kind of things. And sometimes those aren't the most talented guys. They're just the guys that do their job better than everybody else,
A great example, what you just said, Chris, and you made a great point, that, you kind of have to find players that, do their role really well. So we talk about an ego, they have an ego doing their role really well, whether it be rebounding or whatever it is.
Right.
So that was a great point. And we've had great examples. I mean, Jalen Green this past in 2018, which was our last U17 tournament, since we didn't have one this past summer. But he's going to be in the G League, probably the top 2 draft choices. We actually brought him off the bench, and he ended up being MVP of the whole world. But
Right.
We approached him from the standpoint of we're going to be a better team when you come off the bench, because you're going to give us that extra needed uh, scoring we need coming off the bench.
Right.
And he ended up playing obviously more minutes than anybody else. But he, along with Colin Sexton, was the same way. Jason Tatum didn't even start a lot of games for us, because
Right.
those guys really understood what it was to be a team. And,
Right.
and they knew that them coming off the bench playing starter minutes was going to be more effective to us to win the game. And I always said, I give international coaches and teams a lot of credit, because I've always said that international teams, if you would take their best 5 players and play our best 5 players at the U17 level and not sub, and Chris, you probably heard me say this before, but we wouldn't win every game.
Right.
We would maybe 6 or 7 out of 10.
Absolutely.
But when we bring our next 7 in and they bring their next 7 in, that makes a difference, such a difference. And that's where we have a big advantage. So, getting kids to buy into their roles is something that I think has really helped us. And same token, it's helped the players. We have guys like Jabari Parker, who was the #1 high school kid out of he played for us, and now he comes back. I still have a really great relationship with him. He comes back and often says how the things he learned with USA Basketball carry him today at the NBA level. Because now sometimes he's part-time starter, part-time off the bench. His roles have changed a lot. Those kind of things. Obviously he's making a lot of money. He's been in the league a long time, but the things he learned from USA Basketball has really helped him.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's such an incredible experience for these guys, and they get to be around, you and your staff, and you've always got a great group of people around you, professionals that are pouring in. And I think, Coach, you made another great point. You said it earlier. We were talking about ego with some of these guys. There's obviously going to be insecurities in the gym with a bunch of 16-year-old young men. I'm 41 and I'm insecure. It's not like they got it all figured out. And so, but I think, I hope the guys I'm coaching at, Our Lady of the Lake here are listening, because when you've got guys that you mentioned, like Jalen Green, like, Jason Tatum, these guys that are coming off the bench, doing their job and seeing what it is to be a part of something bigger than yourself, then that's when to me as a player, you really get dangerous, because you're not going to be affected by changing variables. You're not, there's a weakness in that if you let things like that affect your play. And so, like mentioning Jabari, if he's the same player coming off the bench or starting, that just probably indicates that he's coming to get you regardless, and he's not going to let that mental part of the game, shackle or limit his, effectiveness. So it's a great lesson, for players, especially on that journey. Coach, I want to talk a little bit about USA Basketball and the youth, department. We're talking about the team, and that's, we could talk about this all day. But I don't think, I still think I won't say a misconception, but there's probably a lack of understanding of what USA Basketball is doing as a part of this ecosystem in the United States. We got 320 some odd million people. We got hoops on every corner. We got a basketball for every kid, rich or poor almost. We have the greatest collection of human capital, on the planet. And it's really hard to apply an infrastructure in that scenario, as opposed to like if you were in Slovenia they got 1.1 million people. They're an A division team. They're putting guys in the pros. They have an assembly line. People are coming off that assembly line. They can all shoot. They can all pass. They all understand how to be coached. I mean, it's just being able to control variables. But USA youth basketball, your team in particular, and I've spent time with Jay and I've spent time with Andrea, and that curriculum that you guys rolled out and made available, and the way that you've done it in terms of not trying to strong arm our ecosystem, but really trying to support, and assist. That is what created so much synergy for me and the basketball embassy to come on and align. Like, let's get on board with USA, but how do we help? Because this, to me, that's probably one of the most fundamentally important, missions that you're leading right now is, let's stress some of these really important things. So can you talk just a little bit? And I mean, that manual is lengthy and there, the gold standards are there, but, if you could maybe summarize, Coach, a little bit for especially people abroad, but there's people right here in the States that don't understand what USA basketball is trying to do in our youth with coaches and players. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, and Chris, you really made some great comments there with what we're trying to do. Let me go back a little bit. Our youth division was established, and Jay Demings does a tremendous job with our youth division as far as vision. What's our vision for our youth division? So basically, our USA Basketball, from its inception as a national governing body, was only to make teams to win gold medals, and that was our number one goal. And as it expanded, as FIBA expanded with the junior national team in 2009, we went a little younger with 16-year-olds. Now, places like Europe always had U16, U15 competition, U14 competition. So that was not really new to them. For us in America, it was really new. And when FIBA started the junior national teams, it probably kick-started what we wanted to do. And in 2014, 15, Jay was hired as our youth division director. And this was completely something new. Jim Tooley, who's our CEO, again, had a tremendous vision for what we should be involved with basketball. And, we could have went just as easy, not have a youth division. We could just went on getting players for try to win gold medals in competition. But being the national governing body, we felt there was a real need for us to make a stand on teaching the game of basketball to all levels. I mean, because we're talking very, very small percentage of players in the national team circuit. So how do we reach all the other all the millions of kids that play basketball? So the first thing we did, and I was a part of this before I ever started full-time with USA Basketball, but 2015 we developed a curriculum. And this curriculum is, by the way, the curriculum is going to be put out in hardcover and be able to be purchased through a lot of different places. So coaches that are listening can purchase a hardcover to it and have it and access to it.
And Coach, don't lose your train of thought. And I know better than to cut off Don Showalter, but I got to tell these coaches that is going to be as good of a purchase as they can make. I've seen it. Obviously, I've spent some time, and it's a great guidebook on how to prioritize, almost like for a teacher, your lesson plans, and there's age appropriate workouts, and it's solid. And I don't endorse stuff. That's how I keep myself in people's living rooms and eating their steaks. But this is something I think is definitely worth it. So keep going, Coach. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Chris. I'm glad you added that into it. So the curriculum is basketball has been in existence in the States since 1891. That's when it first was organized by in Massachusetts and developed as a game. And throughout that time, a lot of things have happened in the game of basketball, and a lot of some of it's not been very good. And so what I always say now, we're trying to make up for 40, 50, 60 years of sometimes bad basketball, how it's taught, whatever. So, we're not going to do it in a year or 2 or 3 or 4. It's going to be a long process in the other direction. But our curriculum is really based on teaching kids the right way. And so coaches that go on our website, usab.com, they without having to get a license, a gold license, they can get the introductory part to our curriculum, which is just teaching young players. We find out a lot that in order to teach young players, it's not you're not teaching a 7, 8-year-old like you're teaching a 16, 17-year-old. And so a lot of coaches, teach a parent, an ex-player, has a group of kids at 7, 8-year-old. It's a community effort, and they're trying to teach the game in a way that the kids are certainly not having much fun at, but not much success at. And if they're not having fun and success at that age, you're not going to stay with it. So our goal with our curriculum is to have kids have fun at it, stay with it, and eventually down the line improve their skills. So our curriculum is based on 4 different levels: introductory, foundational, advanced, and performance. Not necessarily age group, but skill development group. I always say that if you think you're a pretty good coach, high school coach, or a college coach, coach a bunch of 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
Then you'll find out really what kind of coach you are and what you have to emphasize and how to organize the groups and what drills to use that they can do and be successful at. So our curriculum is really based on 4 levels, and it's based on advancing from one level to the other. So our introductory level is just a community type of kids who are just, hey, let's get together and do some basketball and have fun at it. The number one goal with that level, ages 5, 6, 7, 8, is they better have fun. They better have a great time playing basketball. Because if they do, then they're going to stay with it. And then they get into a little higher level, probably middle school, 13, 14 level, where now they want to be a little better players. So now instead of just that little community group, they want to be part of a club team or a school team or whatever. And we progress in our teaching. And then we move up, obviously, to the high school level and the junior national team level or collegiate level. So there's 4 distinct levels that we think are really important to be taught in our curriculum. And we find out coaches at all levels are not tuned in to how to teach the game at a certain level. And so that's what we try and do. And I go all across the country really trying to educate coaches, but also we work through a lot of groups, Chris. We work through Boys and Girls Clubs. We work through YMCAs. We work through junior NBA teams. We work through CYOs, large groups that have large groups of coaches, and really just kind of teach them what is the best way to teach skills in a progressive way. In other words, I'm not going to teach a 7th grader double between the legs, reverse pivot,
Right.
running hook shot. How do we progressively teach
Right.
skills? And that's really what our curriculum is based on.
That's awesome, Coach. I think that's a good, summarization of what you guys are doing. I've told you this in complete transparency. I probably said it a little too early in our relationship and maybe risk you telling me to jump off a cliff, but I remember going overseas, I think the first time in 2008, and I'm working with the Turkish Federation, some friends of yours, Dr. Amir Taram's out there, got me sweating in Diyarbakir. I'm on mountaintops. I'm on the northern Iraqi border and Syrian border working with Kurdish kids and all kinds of stuff. But I remember thinking in that time that I was like, man, this federation is doing some incredible things. Turkey's not small. They got 83 million people. and they're a grassroots program, and it was such an honor to be around it. But it was also, I was like, what is USA basketball doing this? And that in my mind, I was going through that. I was like, I don't, and I wasn't super familiar. So I get back here and do a little digging, and I couldn't find that curriculum. I couldn't find that outreach. And it was like you said, in 2015, 2016 is about the time that I started, bugging you and bugging Jay and bugging Andrea. And Jay and Andrea came down to San Antonio, and they're in some little Southside gym, doing their presentation. And I'm up in the back, sitting up against the wall. And I'm just thinking, there's like 28 people in that gym sweating it out here in San Antonio. I'm thinking every single youth coach in our community needs to be in this gym. Like, everybody needs to be seeing this. And that's when I really was just proud. I was like, man, USA basketball now, they're doing what some of these federations have made it a mission to do. And I still don't think our youth ecosystem has completely caught up with that yet. I don't think they completely understand. And you guys have made it simple. I think a lot of times, I work with a lot of these summer league coaches and these, mom and pop all-stars, and they're great people, but I'm like, you're over here trying to reinvent the wheel, doing all this stuff. Hey, you got an organization that's behind you, ready to support you, going to make you look good in the long run, and is doing it in a progressive, well thought out way. And so I continue to run around, man. Coach, I wear my USA gear all the time, and I tell these guys, you got to get on the website. And shoot, if I'm a foreigner right now, I'm on that website too. I'm looking at what's USA doing. We're number one in the world. I mean, we got to, you got to figure out what are the best doing. What is Spain doing? What is Serbia doing? So there's just some great insight there. And I appreciate you sharing with us. Coach, we got a few more minutes, and you're a busy guy, and I know you've got 200 other people that are trying to get in your ear today.
No problem.
But I want to, just kind of as we sort of get ready to sign off here, we've talked about, all of these different facets and dynamics of your career, how many countless coaches you've touched, players that you've got great relationships with. And there's a couple of these themes that sort of resonate, the relationship piece, the trust, but having fun, and I think you said it, we're working with organizations whose job is essentially to help people fall in love with this awesome game. And I've never been around you in a conference room, a gymnasium, or anywhere else where you weren't enjoying what you're doing. And I just think that's important, that, people have got to love, what they're doing. So, I mean, as we sign off here, Coach, I'd like to just throw it back at you. And you've got a pretty wide variety of folks that'll be listening, some of them watching this, and just, whatever you'd like to leave with us today. It just, what you've already said has been, incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, Chris, first of all, thanks for having me on, because I certainly have a lot of respect for what you've been doing in the game of basketball. I mean, you have done a tremendous job, not only international wise, but in the States, and now with your podcast. I think anything that we can do to help grow the game is going to be valuable. And we have about 40,000 coaches that are part of our USA basketball license program, but there's about a million more that we'd like to reach. And through this way, through these kind of means, we think we're reaching a lot of coaches. I go back to when I first started coaching, how little I knew about the game of basketball, but how much I wanted to learn. And I still, you and I are very similar in this, that no matter how much we know, there's always much more to know. And the more we learn, the better our players get. Our players can't really get much better unless coaches improve. And so I always say to coaches, you can get a lot of stuff you need off the internet. You can get, you can get drill after drill after drill. And I refer to what I said earlier. It's not what you teach, but it's how you teach it. So in order to learn how to teach things, I think you have to make yourself visible. You have to work basketball camps. You have to go to clinics, go to academies where coaches are actually demonstrating how they do things. I think that's where you really grasp the how it's taught type of thing. And you know, we've talked about this many times before, Chris. But you know, as young coaches, sometimes we feel that it's just, hey, this is a good drill, we're gonna use it, or this is a good drill, we're gonna use it, not knowing really why it's something we want to use. And so these are all kind of things I think that as in our curriculum, as we put together our curriculum, we're trying to help coaches understand the how and the why of things, as opposed just to throw things out by saying, here, do this, do this, do this, and giving, here's why you do it, here's how you do it. And that's really how we learn as coaches, and we're lifelong learners. I mean, there's no way that we aren't. And so I encourage coaches that are listening, go to our website, usab.com. You can, if you want to get a gold license, international coaches can also buy USA basketball license. They would have access to 250 speakers that have spoken at our academies. They have access to our curriculum. Our curriculum is going to be in print here, probably within the next year or so. They can purchase that as well. So a lot of great things happening, and we have learned so much from the international game. When I started coaching international basketball, Chris, I'm sure you can, same way, I became a much better coach because I learned the nuances of the international rules, how the game is played a little differently. And I brought that back to my high school team and our junior national team. And we certainly became, I think, a much better overall organization because of our relationship with some great international coaches.
No, I completely agree, Coach. And that's some Don Showalter mind candy right there. You're sharing. But Coach, I can't thank you enough, and I'm glad you added that in again about the international game. We, you know, a lot of times we're leaned on so much in the international basketball community, you know, for you know, an example, because we do that pretty well, you know. But if we're wise about what we're doing, we're taking as much, if not more, than we're given these days, you know, in the basketball world. And I think if you know, it's not just coaches, it's administrators, you know, it's players, it's anybody around the game, it's fans. I mean, if you can't take a page out of what's happening in some other countries, you're missing it. So, but Coach, I cannot thank you enough again. It's just nice to catch up. Actually, these have been pretty uncertain times, and it's not like I can, you know, just hop on a plane these days, and or vice versa, as easily as we once could. So I look forward to those better days ahead. But in the meantime, Coach, what you're doing is it means a lot to a lot of folks, and you probably hear it, but don't hear it enough. So, you know, from our network and our family, you know, in the Basketball Embassy, just want to say thanks for being you, and thanks for continuing to pour into this game.
Really appreciate it, Chris. And like I said, these podcasts are going to have really some far-reaching, I think, effects on the game and how it's played, and ideas and learning situations. So you guys keep up the great work.
Thanks a lot, Coach. Hey, so John and Mary, before Coach jumps off, do I need to ring out Coach Showalter for anything else before he leaves? Coach, I appreciate it. That was fun. I think we'll have some great content there. There's some great stuff. You're just really good at giving people.
Coach, we're asking everybody to do a little promo for us. You know,
sure.
We're not too proud to ask.
Hey,
What we'd love for you to do is just look straight at the camera on your computer there, and just give us I'm Coach Don Showalter, and you're listening to United We Hoop, the United We Hoop podcast, something like that. Whatever comes out of your mouth, however you want to say it.
All right. Just go ahead and do it from my.
Look right at the camera on your laptop, and that'll be.
Okay. Yeah, hey, I'm Don Showalter with USA Basketball, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of United We Hoop podcast. It's a great podcast about teaching and coaches the game of basketball as far as how much they want to get better. I'm going to start over.
Okay. You don't even have to do that long. I mean, really and truly, a real quick little, I'm
Okay.
Don Walter, and you're listening to the Basketball Embassy's United We Hoop podcast.
I wasn't used to looking at myself for that length of time. So.
Coach, if you had a beard like this, you wouldn't look at yourself. You'd get away from this.
We're going to hold Chris down and shave.
There you
All right,
go.
it's
I think
happening.
it looks good. I think it looks good.
I do too. I do too.
All right. Hey, I'm Don Showalter with USA Basketball. Welcome to United We Hoop podcast. We hope you get a lot out of this podcast, and it's been great doing it.
Okay. John, was that good?
Perfect. Got it.
All right. Thanks, Coach. You
You
were
bet.
wonderful. That was terrific,
Coach.
guys. Really good conversation. Thank you so
Good.
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, John. Coach, I'll be bugging you, man. I'm
Good.
looking forward to the dust settling a little bit. We definitely got to get you down here. I think
Yeah.